Welcome everyone to What the Force, and welcome to a special, I would say, end of year celebration, and also a massive celebration and congratulations to Amy Richau, who's just completed 365 days of Star Wars Women.
Yay!
Welcome, Amy.
Thank you for having me.
I'm just so happy to have you on the podcast for this because of the inspirational nature of this whole project, as insane as I'm sure it felt along the way. Maybe for those that for some reason are not aware of this project, did you want to explain what it is?
Sure. So 365 Days of Star Wars Women is a project I did where every day I highlight a female Star Wars character from films, TV shows, comic books, video games, or I highlight a writer, artist, someone for like behind the scenes, like an actress, someone who worked in the film crew. And yeah, it has been quite a ride.
And it started day one of 2018 and went from there. And like, although I don't know that you updated every single day, you did have a day or an update for every single day.
Yeah, I certainly didn't work on the project every day, but I did. Actually, near the beginning, I really didn't schedule out because like I really didn't have this idea firmly, like I'm definitely going to do this until like December 28th, I believe. I decided, no, I'm going to do this. And then I was just like, whoa, like, okay, how am I going to do this? And then, I was running behind. I was really going day by day for the first couple of months. Mm-hmm. But definitely during the last half of it, I've tried to schedule out. Been a little bit late on a couple of days, but I have had a new post every day. And this is like, I feel like I'm going in the future when I've already succeeded. So hopefully I won't have screwed it up between now and then.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it'll be perfect. We are recording this in advance, and I do know who the last person of the year is, and we will go into that and make sure that if you haven't had an opportunity to check out this amazing accomplishment, that as soon as you're done this podcast, go immediately and just start looking through all of these wonderful women that Amy has documented and given you great starting places to discover more. All right, so let's dig in. Amy, how did your relationship with Star Wars start?
Well, I know, it's been a long journey. When A New Hope came out, I was 4 years old, and my dad saw it in the theaters by himself or with a friend, I'm not sure, and came home and told my mom that he thought that my mom and my older sister and I would love it. We should go see it right away. And we went and saw it. And I love that story because I love that my dad, like, immediately, like, never thought that the women and the girls in his life, like, it wasn't for them. He immediately was like, this is great. Let's go see it as a family. And my mom said that like we basically just all fell for Star Wars, like right away. Like everyone's Christmas gifts were Star Wars immediately, like as soon as they could, had the toys, and we just kind of went from there. And I have only a very, very vague memory of seeing it in the theater. It is one of actually like the earliest memories I can date. It is of the Death Star troopers and like the beam that's coming out of the Death Star to destroy Alderaan. So it's not like a really like happy image. Like maybe it's like a little bit of trauma to set me up for a lifelong love of Star Wars.
Like the ones that are like in the little tunnel and they're like hiding.
The one that are they're like trying to hide from the beam. Like that's my one like snapshot image. Like that's what I remember from the theater. And then in Empire Strikes Back, I remember being terrified that Yoda was going to hurt Luke for some reason. And I was pestering my dad the entire screening, and he was just like, Yoda's good. Like Luke's going to be fine. I was very worried about that. But it was Return of the Jedi. I was 10. And I think a 10-year-old girl is the perfect age to see Return of the Jedi because of so many things, including the Ewoks, of course. When I saw Return of the Jedi, that's when my love of Star Wars just completely went into overdrive. And, it's just been, it's been that way ever since.
Yeah. And I've pretty similar experiences growing up. Like, it was kind of always with me, but I grew up with like the VHSs and the beta tapes and stuff like that. But that's so great that you actually got to see them and it was like a family experience, because that means that like you were supported in your fandom like the whole time, which is
it
really
was
amazing.
and my dad, like, when my dad and I had nothing else in common, like we always had a love of movies. He was very big into classic movies. We saw all the Indiana Jones movies together in the theater, and he always like he wanted me to work in Star Wars. Like if he could have gone back, he would have wanted to be someone who worked at ILM. And so he was really, my parents, both of them were really, really like happy with me doing anything in visual arts or the entertainment industry. Like they were not your typical parents who like want you to be, you know, something else. They were always very, very supportive of it.
So how did your more professional engagement with Star Wars happen?
So I was a film studies major at UC Santa Barbara, which was very much more film history, film analysis, film theory than film production. There was a little bit of film production. I was so bad at film production. All of that. Like, so I was definitely like much more a behind the scenes person. I ended up working in several film preservation archives and labs. I had done a little bit of training at the George Eastman House. And I ended up moving from Los Angeles, where I did all of that work, the film preservation work, to the Bay Area, in part because I was trying to figure out if I should marry my now husband. We'd been dating long distance for a while. And I was up in the Bay Area, and I ended up with a temporary contract job at the Lucasfilm Film Archives, which was amazing. Wow. It was very funny. I lived 2 hours. It was almost a 2-hour drive each way there.
Like you were in the like South Bay?
I was in Mountain View. So like Mountain View all the way up.
Okay, so like right Google. Like now where Google is.
Yeah, I was like like there, and because that's where my husband was working, and like, you know, his job was like, you know, 10 minutes away, you know, but you know, mine was like this temporary contract job, but it was Star Wars, and so
lovely area, but you have to like either go around or cross a bridge. Like,
yeah, I mean, we used to joke that between like my gas bill and like my bridge tolls, like I don't even think I think I might have lost money like when I was working there. But like my husband's also a really big Star Wars fan, and so like, we were both like, Star Wars, yes, let's do it, you know, which was great. And so I was at Skywalker Ranch for, I think it was like about 8 months, and it was when Revenge of the Sith was mostly in post-production.
Right. Okay. So like early 2000s.
So it was like 2004, 2005.
Yeah.
And when I left, Sith was just about to come out, and the Lucasfilm offices were moving. They had like Big Rock Ranch, which was kind of like a little bit, it was close to Skywalker Ranch, but it was kind of a different property. Everyone there moved to the Presidio, which is where they are now, which is in kind of San Francisco, more proper, on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge.
It's like an old retired army base, I believe.
I think so, yeah. No, it's
the Presidio. Yeah, it's almost like these little buildings and then lots of parking lots.
Yeah, I went there. I was in San Francisco over the summer, actually doing an interview for Looking for Leia, and I like, you know, pinged. I write for StarWars.com every now and then as a contributing writer, and I like, you know, pinged everyone who was there who I had, you know, had emailed with. I was like, hey, you know, I'm gonna be there. Like, can I come by? And luckily, you know, they said yes, and I got a tour, and it was really, really weird actually. Being back in a Lucasfilm office, when the last time I had been in a Lucasfilm office, like I wasn't married and I didn't have kids, and it seemed so long ago. I mean, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So it was really, really fun to go back. It kind of seemed like a fun kind of full circle moment.
Journey. Yeah. Yeah. And I think I saw some of those pictures. Like, I believe that. Did you take one with the Yoda statue? Because that's like,
yeah, I mean, everyone, that's what you got to do. Like,
yeah.
That's like,
yeah, I was like, what's Amy doing out there? I guess, looking for Leia. But I was like, maybe she's interviewing somebody while she's out there. I was just kind of thinking about all of these, like, in a way, headcanon about what you were up to.
It was really funny because I don't, I'm a mom, and I have been lucky enough to have a choice if I wanted to have a full-time career while I was a mom or not work as much. And I have chosen to not work only like part-time or just, you know, be a stay-at-home mom. And it was really like, I don't have a lot of trips that are just me going places.
Right.
And so it was like, it was very, very hilarious to everyone that they were like, of course, like your trip is you're going to like, you know, you're going on a Star Wars trip. I'm like, yeah, like, duh. You know, like,
yeah,
why wouldn't I go on a Star Wars trip if that's a possibility?
That is like a vacation. Come on. Like, yeah. That's so great. Like that you know, not only got to kind of help with film preservation and that sort of side of Lucas, but also got to revisit your past just recently, kind of through this project as well as through Looking for Leia, that's awesome.
You know, it was like part of the reason why I wanted to do 365 is because I struggle to convince myself to find the time for things that are just for me and are not like part of me being like, you know, a mother or a wife, or I mean, I don't really have anything that much stuff that has to do with being a wife, but you know, like, I mean, just like, there's a lot of stuff that's family related.
Yeah, like upkeeping everybody's schedule in your own heads is almost like a full-time job. As a mom myself, I totally get it.
Yeah, and I tended to put away, I'd been doing a little bit of writing, and a lot of it was Star Wars related. Some of it was Denver Broncos related, because I also really like the Denver Broncos.
Cool.
But I was always putting that writing on the back burner. And like a lot of the writing I was doing didn't really have a deadline, because it wasn't, I'm not a journalist like breaking news or doing like timely interviews most of the time. And that was kind of like a large reason I wanted to do 365, is because I needed to have a deadline, and having a deadline every single day of the year, a little excessive, I would say now looking back. But I wanted just to have a project that was mine. And I could just, force myself to spend time on me and to do something that was for me.
And that like you could feel proud of accomplishing, I would say too. I definitely hear that in your voice.
The longer, I think the older I get, the easier it is to start projects and not finish them for a variety of reasons. And I don't like that. Like, I like to start what I finish. And I like projects that have defined beginnings and ends. Like, I'd worked on a couple films, like I worked on a couple political campaigns. Like, what's really nice about those is that like they start and they end, and then then you just kind of like, I did that. You can kind of look back and be like, that is something I did. It's a body of work. And that to me is meaningful and inspiring for me, much more so than just kind of looking back and being like, oh, look at that, I wrote a whole bunch of articles that I liked. I mean, that's great, and like that also can be inspiring, but like for me, like having this kind of being a package thing, it was helpful for me to see it that way.
That's great. Did you want to talk a little bit about how this idea sprung, the wellspring of ideas, as it were?
I know. Well, it's like every time I tell it, I feel like I tell it a little bit differently. But like I kind of did want something that would force me to write every day. I wanted to write about Star Wars women, partially because I had done a series of articles for Fangirl blog where I'd done screenshots of every single woman that appeared in the Star Wars feature films. And I was kind of looking about like, where are they? Where are they not? I love Star Wars reference stuff. Like, I love just picking it apart and looking at the details and kind of analyzing things like that. Like, I'm not like a hot take person. I'm not like a, list person a lot. Like, I really just like the deep kind of like analysis. And I felt like I had kind of generated a lot of this information. What can I do with it? Like, I found I have all these interesting tidbits. Like, I didn't know that like there was a woman under the Zuckuss costume, like in Empire Strikes Back, the bounty hunter. Like, I was like, look at that. Like, how did I not know that? And so I found all that, and I kind of wanted to do something with that. I really wanted to write, one of the articles I'd been putting off writing was kind of an everything you want to know about the handmaidens. Like, I love the Natalie handmaidens, like so many Star Wars fans. And I was kind of thinking, like, what can I do with all of this? And so really it was just going to be like a Twitter shout out originally. It was going to be a Twitter shout out, like, here's who they are. Here's, a picture of them. And that was it. And it was all going to be characters. And then I was like, well, there aren't enough characters of women in the movies. Like, even if you go very, very small, like, it would just get boring, because it's like that person way in the back, like, who you really can't get a good shot of. Like, that's not good. So I was like, well, okay, well, I can do the TV shows and I can do the comics and the books. But then the best idea I had, I think, was including women who work in Star Wars. And that, as the year has gone by, has been the thing that has meant the most to me. Like, talking, first off, like, even just like highlighting writers and producers and actresses. But then, I had no idea that anyone would say yes to interviews. It didn't even occur to me to ask anyone if they would do an interview until I was a couple months in. But it turns out that a lot of people wanted to do them, which is amazing. I think that there will end up being about 40 when all comes out. Maybe that's wrong.
That's so impressive.
Right. It was way more than I thought. I ended up doing. Well, like, I was kind of like, about 2/3 of the way through, I was like, oh my gosh, I already have so many like interviews. Like, I should like slow up. I should just get it done. I should just, like, kind of, go out, schedule so I'm early, so I'm not working in December. And then I'm like, oh, but I could have a week of interviews for this and for that.
Interviews do take time to schedule and to get permission, especially with creators that are working for Lucasfilm themselves. So, like, mad respect to the effort that went into that, Amy.
I really, like, it was amazing to hear back from so many people. Like, some people, I asked a lot more people. There were tons of people who I just never heard from, and I don't even know if they really got the ask, because it's always kind of hard to know, like, when you're, but I, like, kind of like tweeted at a couple people, and they were like, hey, yeah, that would be great, and so, like, it was really, really fun having these, like, There were a
Let me
couple people
slip into
who
your mentions.
there were a couple people I just went through Lucasfilm publicists
Right.
to talk to. I didn't actually talk to, but that was very, very rare. Almost all of these cases, like I was just emailing, the women who I was interviewing, and it was interesting to see how similar so many of these stories were, but they were all, of course, like different in different ways. But it was really, really fun, because some of them were huge Star Wars fans, some of them not so much. Like when they first, got the roles, it was really like the interviews really kind of kept me. I would say the interviews and then the response from people on Twitter, which was literally almost entirely positive, which is not what I was expecting. I just expected to get trolled, but I really didn't, which is great. Knock on, like, knock on something like that doesn't change. Those are the two things that really helped me get through the year.
I love how it's set up as almost like this snapshot where you can get like more information or dig into like deeper links that are elsewhere. But also it recommends like, hey, if you like this article, go check out this too. Like it's when you get caught up in like Wikipedia, but only for women in Star Wars. It's amazing that way.
And kind of one of my goals is I love Wikipedia and I love Star Wars reference books. And so I wanted it to be much more reference based than me. Like I didn't want it to be a ranked list. I didn't want it to be, I like my opinion in it a lot. There's my opinions in it a little bit, but like I really wanted it. I wanted it to be a positive Star Wars project, because I did come up with this right when the whole Last Jedi stuff was starting to like, like everything was starting to like go dark, like Star Wars fandom. You're just like, whoa, like it was a movie. Let's all chill out. I wanted to do something that was positive. I wanted to do something that was about Star Wars women. I wanted to do something that incorporated legends as well as canon.
Yeah.
And I really did want it as a jumping off point. Like I wasn't trying to compete with Wikipedia. Like, I mean, I link to Wikipedia a lot, but I also think that sometimes when I look at characters in Wikipedia, you're just like, you read, especially if it's like a Legends comic character and you're not familiar, like if you never read that comic, like you can read the entry for Wikipedia and like the first couple paragraphs and you're like, I have no idea what they're talking about or who that, like what, like what empire, like who, what, like when is this, like how early is this? So I really wanted to try to make it so you could get a sense of who these characters were very, very quickly. I wanted it to be about the women and not so much their connection to the greater kind of Star Wars universe. Like with Lyra Urso, like I didn't want Lyra Urso, like, she's Jin's mom, like she's Galen's wife. Like, no, she's a scientist. Like,
she's so cool.
Like she has her, like this is like this is about Lyra, this is about her and like her life. And like, of course she is, a wife and a mother. And that is very important to, the Star Wars story. But like, but she is, almost everyone, has other stories to tell other than their relationships to other Star Wars characters. And sometimes it's, you don't get a lot of chance to, shine a spotlight on some of these. And that's the same for plenty of male characters as well. But since I'm just talking about the ladies, well, I mean, like, it's funny because like I did like the two comments I got near the beginning and near the end were like, well, what about 365 Star Wars men? And I'm like, go for it. Like, I dare you, come back to me when you're 200 days in and then, like, then we can talk. But I was like, I thought it was an interesting comment because I was like, I talk about male characters and men who work in Star Wars in practically every single entry. So it's not like I'm just looking at women. Like, it's looking at Star Wars. Like, it's, I could have easily done droids or creatures or vehicles. And like, I always think like if I would have done creatures, when people would be like, oh, like, why do you hate droids so much? Like, why do like they never would have said
why do you
that.
hate organics, Amy?
Yeah.
Like, what is your problem with organics? It's like, well, I did droids. Sorry. You do organics. There you go.
But I am very happy to say that that even when I did the Last Jedi week, I was like, every now and then I'm like, I'm just waiting for it. Here's Kathleen Kennedy's day. Come at me, boys. But I really just didn't get anything. So that's good.
And I think that this is going to be a valuable resource, I think, going forward. I actually hope, like, my secret, like, hope in it is that it inspires somebody to take on one of these characters and flesh them out actually in, like, canon, right? To be like, I love
Johnson
this character.
to see it. And I want him to, like, find it. And then to, like, for his new trilogy, be like, like,
Oh,
Like, look at that. Like, I
yeah.
mean, because there are so many fun characters out there. That is exactly what I want too.
Well, like, and I remember talking, with Amy Radcliffe about size noodles, especially. Like, I just want like her own like comic or like something like that. Like, there's just so many fun, amazing female characters out there with their own like cool stories, and these creators as well, giving them more opportunities to, talk about these and build more female characters would be amazing. I want to be able to do this in maybe another year or two and like have another unique 365 days of women. That would be amazing if we could actually fill it all up with more characters.
Yeah, what I love when Star Wars connects different characters, and I like that like the character of Lena Graff started off like in Young Readers kind of like book series, and then came back in like Vader's Castle comic. Like I love stuff like that. And I think that there are a lot of characters that they could kind of come back to, or characters that started off in a book that could end up in a movie and things like that.
Yeah.
I am like a huge sucker for connecting the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I love it. As long as it's done well and it feels like, oh, hey, this actually could happen. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's talk about how the whole year started. And I think that you chose the perfect character to start off the year, which was Leia Organa.
Yeah, you gotta start with Leia. I'm like looking at my spreadsheet. I'm like, who did I start off with? I would have been able to come up with that.
No, she was the right one.
Like I think if I look back at that first post, I would cringe because I didn't really know how I was gonna have the different, how I think I would rewrite it. That's what would happen. I felt like I had to start off with Leia, and every now and then I would intentionally pick someone for a specific day.
Yeah.
I didn't do that a lot, but I did pick Leia first on purpose, and I did put Carrie Fisher on May the 4th on purpose. I did not put Yaddle on Valentine's Day on purpose. That was just a lovely, lovely accident. Because I was like, Yaddle, like she's perfect for you. Like this is great because everyone loves Yaddle, and that's like I want more Yaddle stories personally. Because
she disappears between the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. I'm like,
yeah, I mean, she's got some fun legend stuff, and I would like to see some of that come back. And no, I just think that what is interesting to me is like when I couldn't even find good screenshots of some of the female characters that were in the prequels. I forgot that none of the female Jedi in the prequels ever spoke. And there were plenty of male Jedis who also didn't speak, but still there could have been at least one. But
agreed. Yeah.
But I couldn't even get good screenshots of some of them. And most of the shots that you see of them aren't of them from the movies. They are them from publicity, or they're from the visual dictionary.
Yeah.
It was kind of an interesting reminder. You were just like, man, you were in that movie, but not really.
Yeah. Yeah. Even from, early, of course, A New Hope, or just Star Wars as it was originally called, we really had one woman plus Aunt Beru in A New Hope.
And there were a couple in the cantina, but
yeah,
kind of
no
blink and you'll miss them. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And they were just the background kind of creature characters who were given weird names by the creature department and costuming department for the longest time. We didn't have a lot of women early on, and so I liked that we got more women with now legends, but still, even then, it's just a handful until the prequels come around.
I did not read a ton of the Legends books or Legends, and I had not read really any of the Legends comics. I really never read comics pretty much until I started this project. Some of the Forces of Destiny's comics I had gotten and I'd read those, but I just never really felt, I never really understood why, because I always liked a lot of I like visual material in general. And so it was kind of a disconnect that comics never really clicked with me. But now I just am obsessed with comics, and not just Star Wars comics, just comics in general.
Yeah.
It's really just become a problem.
Where do I put them all? Do you go digital or do you go physical?
I do a mix. And there's not really a good rhyme or reason about what I buy digitally. I try to if I start buying digitally, I'll just buy everything digitally. And I'm really behind. on a lot of, different comics, but that's fine. But I got a subscription to Marvel Unlimited, which then gave me access to like all the Legends comics, and that just made everything much worse in terms of like how I'm spending my time, perhaps. There were so many interesting female characters in Legends comics and Legends books, and I got a lot of help from people online where I was just like, hey, like sometimes some people I just emailed and I was like, give me a list of like the 20 women that you would think I was a jerk if I didn't include, or talk to me about, like I did several kind of, tweets where I was like, here are 5 women that I have in Legends video games. Who else? And I got so many great responses that were really made my life easier, because like the whole research phase of trying to, I went through like all kinds of like IMDb stuff about like, the Clone Wars TV series and Star Wars Rebels, and looking at all of this stuff, really trying to kind of, gather together all of this stuff. It became clear quite quickly that I was not going to have a hard time coming up with 365 women, and I was going to end up in the state that I am in now, where I'm basically swapping out who's in the final 10 pretty much every day, and I've been doing that for 2 weeks straight.
I mean, it's just impressive that, now that you're digging into it, you're able to find so many, and to me that means that there is space in the galaxy for many more like women-centric stories, right? Like,
yeah, I think absolutely. And also I think, when you see any kind of person represented, like who isn't represented a lot, like you don't want there to be just one, and you don't want them to always be the hero, you don't want them to always be the villain. You want them to like, to be good and bad, and make good choices and make bad choices, and have small, you want them to be the whole like rainbow of everything. Yeah. Because that is how it should be. Because like that's how real life is. And so I think that, they're working their way there. There could still be more. Definitely want it to be a celebration, and not like, I did this whole project and now I'm going to like, just like talk about where the women weren't. I think that is an interesting conversation about where women, like, I think it is an interesting and an important conversation about that. I couldn't find any female composers. The female directors are very scarce. Like, and honestly, if it wasn't for The Mandalorian, I wouldn't have any. Like, which I like, she hasn't even, it hasn't even aired yet.
Well,
but like
we have Vic Mahoney.
Yeah, Victoria Mahoney. So she's a second unit director, which is great. And she had my favorite tweet of the entire year, because she tweeted something out about 365, and I was like, that was like that happened on like right in July, and I was like I think that carried me through, because like she knows who I am.
I exist in her mind.
I know. I was like, maybe she's looking at this website, in Pinewood Studios right now.
And thinking about all the women she could put in.
Probably not. She's probably busy. But,
super busy.
But for a second, she knew what this was.
That's amazing. And yeah, no, I agree. I agree that just actually celebrating the women and telling their stories, like very much like Women of the Galaxy was very much like that as well, which is like, let's just talk about them. And tell those stories, because I think that there is an important conversation to say when there is lacking, but it can take away from some of the beautiful and creative storytelling that has already happened a little.
Yeah, and so I kind of struggle with that, because I do think it's an important conversation, but like I definitely wanted this to be kind of more in a celebratory mode. And I think some of my favorite posts have been about women where they happen to be in Star Wars, but like they've done all this other amazing stuff. And like Star Wars really is this small little part of it was a fun little thing that they did, like one year, but like they've gone on to do like a whole bunch of other things. I think that is also, I think that's just inspiring in general. Like, and what I wanted every single girl who might run into this to look at it and to be able to find themselves in it.
Yeah.
And so like when I was kind of looking, like, I categorized all my posts, and like I had, a whole category of interviews, and at first I was just asking like anyone who I could think of who followed me, or like had their DMs open on Twitter, or like had an email address like on the writer's website. I was just kind of, not going about it in any kind of like a thinking about it like way for the interviews. And I looked at the interview page and I was like, oh, yep, like that's a whole bunch of white brunettes, just like Star Wars, you know, like, and I was like, you know what? I really, really like, I want everyone to be able to see themselves in Star Wars. I would try to find women who were racially diverse and women who had very different backgrounds, women who were Star Wars fans, women who weren't Star Wars fans, women who were young and old and worked in every single aspect of the Star Wars universe that I could. Like, I was really like, okay, like, you know, fantasy flight games, like they have a whole bunch of stuff going on, you know, like video games, who's working in video games.
Yeah.
Really became quite a little bit obsessive about that part. I was just like, I must find, you know, like a book designer. I must find, you know, like someone who works in sound. And that part has been fun. And I hope to continue. I hope to add to the interviews, you know. I plan to, like, I'm not going to update the site daily or anything even remotely close to daily after the end of this year, but I do plan on adding people and adding, especially to the interviews. I would really like to do that. No one paid me to write this book, but I feel like I am writing a book.
Yeah,
like,
basically.
On the internet.
Yeah, and it's online, and it's this almost like index and tool that people can actually like get into and deep dive into these people and characters, which is so great. So speaking of interviews, what has been your favorite interview of the 40 that you've done?
That's a hard one.
Sorry.
No, I know. I was like, I should have an answer to that. There were so many that were so good. I was really, really, and this was someone who I did not actually speak to personally, but I was really excited about Amy Beth Christensen, interviewing her because
ABC.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that like her, you know, artwork is, I love just her artwork style in general, but like she's just been involved in so much Star Wars animation, and her career has just been so great. But I still feel like a lot of people don't know who she is, or are not familiar with her name. I was really excited about interviewing Nicole. I don't know how to say her last name, like Dubach maybe, but she wrote a couple of Star Wars Rebels episodes, and I was like just geek. Like, so she was one of the daughters in Major Dad. She was an actress. She was a child actress.
Oh, okay.
And I remember watching Major
show.
Dad, and so I was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, like, so she started off as a child actress, and then she, like, I think she went to Yale, and then she came back, and she was like a writer, and she's now the showrunner for, it's going to be a Disney Junior animated show reboot of The Rocketeer, which is coming out next year.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, you have the most amazing career path ever. Like, you know, and she was actually someone I tweeted at, and I was like, this woman is like, her career, like her IMDb just blew my mind. Like, I wish I could interview her. And she was like, hello, you know, like, you can.
Yes, you can. I accept your proposal.
So one of the first people I interviewed was Jennifer Heddle, who is an editor at Lucasfilm Press, and she put me in touch with Lee Ziesk, which, again, I'm going to mangle everyone's name because I never thought about how to say it out loud. But she is a book designer for children's and young adult books with Disney Press. And I met her, actually. I met Jennifer and Lee when I went to Lucasfilm over the summer. And she is such a Star Wars geek, and I love it so much. Like, she just loves her job. She puts all kinds of detail that, you know, she told me when I was there over the summer that she had seen a concept art of Lady Proxima's lair. And she of the windows that are like on the top that like get broken, you know, to the sense. She had seen a design that was in the windows of Lady Proxima's lair. And she took one of the designs from that and used it as like a page break design in the book Most Wanted.
Cool.
And she just done that, and she was like, I did it, like, I didn't tell anyone about it, like, nobody, like, she was like, I don't think anybody knows except for you now, like, you know. And she just did it because she thought it was cool, and it was a cute little like Easter egg. And I was just like, I love it when you hear stories about people at Lucasfilm who do things like that for no other reason than they love Star Wars, and it's just like this little touch, this little detail. I live for stuff like that. So I was very excited, you know, about that interview, just because, you know, the small things are, you know, are I think are just really kind of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. So was that like the one kind of detail that sticks out in your mind of like things that you learned about like a Lucasfilm person, for example, that really stuck with you?
I think that one was kind of interesting because like I had never thought about book designers in general. No offense to book designers, you know, but I think that that's something that you don't really think about that much, even though like I find myself extremely drawn to the covers of books. And so like it is something that definitely affects me as a reader. Like I think it's a really important position. Certainly it affects whether I pick up a book or not at a bookstore. To get introduced to her, to be able to meet her, to hear that little story, like it was just delightful.
I think it really helped you, or at least what I'm hearing is that, and to me, it's opened my eyes to And I've always thought that there's tons of people involved in Star Wars, but like this is like even down to the book designer. Like I didn't even think about that person existing.
Like in a couple of days, this will already have been published, I guess, by the time this comes out. But Elizabeth Schafer is a creative director at Del Rey.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been following her on Twitter for a while. I knew she was an editor at Del Rey, but I had no idea that she had written a bunch of Star Wars young readers books. Like she wrote a Forces of Destiny book, and she wrote the young readers adaptations for The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. So like 6 to like 12-year-old, like, because I feel like you always hear about the adult novelization, you hear about the middle grade
junior novelization, yeah.
But there's also a young readers novelization, and she wrote both of them. And I think that there's, it's interesting because I feel like I've heard so many times people talking about how, you don't hear Rey and Rose haven't been written by women, but it turns out that they have. It just was for a very younger, kind of audience.
Mm-hmm.
All this information was new to me, and I was just like, gosh, like I just didn't realize that, like I don't think a lot about, even though I buy them for my kids sometimes, like I don't actually think about the creation of those books and what that is like, and how like she wrote those young readers books from the script. She hadn't seen the movie, just like, Jason Fry for the adult novelization, and, learning more about like the process. I really enjoyed like talking to different editors about, how they put different books together. Like another interview that's coming out later this month is with a woman who works at DK, and they do a lot of like the visual dictionaries and character encyclopedias. Like I find that really fascinating.
The guides into the lesser known areas of the universe, like droidography and
and
like
just
that.
Just like the very kind of how do you put these books together, how so many people are involved putting these books together. So I find that very interesting. But like Annie Stoll is one of like the artists I interviewed with Women in the Galaxy, and I had actually contacted her months before about doing an interview because she had done the illustrations for Sabine My Rebel sketchbook, and she was like, I want to do an interview, this would be great, we should wait because something's coming later this year. And then like when that book got announced, I'm like, I think I know what you were talking about.
Annie Stoll is amazing.
She's delightful. And so we had back and forth, and like, I did her interview, and I was so happy to do her interview. And then, she just got nominated for a Grammy for her work. Like she did like some work for like an Al Yankovic, like album. And she literally just a couple days ago got nominated for a Grammy. And I'm like, Annie, it made me feel like I was calling her, because I had been chatting with her, and I was like, I was so proud of her, because I was like, one of my 365 just got nominated for a Grammy. I always liked her work. I knew who she was before, so I always would have been happy for her. But like that really, that personal connection just really...
You're now friendly with this person, and you want the best for them too, right?
Small things like that. Anna Graves, like Satine is my favorite non-film character, I would say. I love Satine. I asked Claudia Gray if Satine was going to be in Masters and Apprentice, and she would not tell me.
Oh. Oh,
but because I mean, of course she can't. She wants to continue to to be hired by Lucasfilm. So good job for
yes, obviously.
But I was like, you can tell me. She's like, I can't. Obviously, like, what are you talking about? Satine is one of my favorite characters, and got to interview Anna. So I will give a big shout out to Catherine Tabor. Was one of my very first interviews. She's the voice of Padme, mostly in the Clone Wars, and she also voiced Leia. And she gave my information to like 6 other Leias, and I interviewed almost all of them. So like that was really great. That was very, very nice of her. But Anna Graves was one of them, and because she had done a little bit of Leia voice work, but she was mostly Satine. And she sent me a screenshot of Satine that said "Thank you, Amy" on it, which was basically like getting a thank you note from a Star Wars character. And I appreciated that. And I've been sharing it with a whole bunch of Amy's, because I've interviewed like 4 Amy's, I think, during the year.
Amy seems like a really common name in the fandom.
It was for sure a common name. Some of them have been my age, some of them have been younger.
Yeah.
I have a lot of like 365 Star Wars Amy's jokes though, because I was like, I think we can get there.
What I really like take away from this, as well as things that I've come to slowly realize, is like how many people are involved in Star Wars and how intricate each aspect of it is, down to like what you just said, to do with, oh, hey, we have this book and we have this like little page, right, that changes things. But all of these people were inspired at some point to either, put their hands up or submit their portfolio or say, hey, I want to write for Star Wars, or I want to, act for Star Wars. How do we encourage either the next generation of women or the next generation of creators towards, interesting and awesome female characters, or taking a chance out there in the fandom to do something as epic as what you've done?
Well, I think that, a lot of people have this, I am not alone in my huge love for Star Wars, obviously. A lot of people have this huge love and passion for Star Wars and want to be involved with Star Wars in some way. And I think how I worked that out through my life earlier is that I love Star Wars. Star Wars really helped inspire a great love of movies, all movies, and film history for me. And so I kind of took that and then had a career in film preservation. And I still write about, classic movies from time to time. Not so much this year, but hopefully more next year. I think that the common thing that everyone has, whether they were an artist or a producer or an actress, is that they didn't necessarily go after Star Wars. They just tried to be the best, whatever they were going for, their, career-wise, they tried to be best in that. And they went to conferences and they networked. I know, I'm an introvert. I know that that's very, very challenging. But one of the reasons why I got my job at Skywalker Sound, I think, is because I knew someone who worked at Industrial Light and Magic, because she was an archivist there. And she didn't hire me, but she, kind of gave me a thumbs up, to the people who were hiring. That's always helpful. But, I think people always ask writers, well, I want to write a Star Wars book. How do I do that? And they're like, well, you should just write your own book with your own, original story and like that. And then do that, be a successful writer, have a good working relationship. And then maybe if things, the stars collide, then it'll all work out. But I think that sometimes people are just oh, I just really want to, if you narrow it just to I just want to work in Star Wars, that really, that's not going, it's not that it's not achievable. It's always great to have, the goals, but what you should concentrate on is the work and your passion for the work and just doing the best that you can. And just also just not, if you don't see women doing what you want to do, don't let that stop you. There was a woman who I interviewed who works at Lucasfilm Games, and she said that one of the things that inspired her to take that job was that she was a seat filler, which is a very LA thing to do. I did that several times when I lived in Los Angeles, and I'm assuming she was in Los Angeles when she did this. And there was a gaming awards, and she saw women winning these video game awards, and she was just I didn't even know that women, that was a thing, that I didn't know that women were really working in video games very much, because you don't really see it.
Being a seat filler is a very LA thing to do, but I think it also happens in New York in theater district too, where you're actually paid, or you can pay a small fee to fill a seat that they needed filling in that theater so it looks full.
Yeah, no, I know, it's very I have a whole bunch of stories about that.
Yeah, it's just not a common thing, I would say, in non-metropolitan areas. It's not something that exists where I live, as an example. Right. So some people just might not know what that concept is, but that's so cool that she saw these women winning these awards.
And I think that, it's helpful. And I think that is, when she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's one of the reasons why I want to do this, is because if there are women, or especially girls out there who are I want to be a concept artist. There aren't a lot of female concept artists that are worked in Star Wars, but I found one and I'm going to have one, and so they can see it. And it is easier to feel like you can do it if you see someone who looks like you, I feel who does it. I really want many, many more Star Wars female villains. Oh, yes. I think that is something that so many people are clamoring for. But if you want to see that, just write your own villain, have your own stories, and then, maybe that can, work up your way.
Right. Really amazing female villains all the time.
Yeah. And then send them to me. Send your many, and then I will.
Yes. And then we will read them. Literally, I love female villains. They're great. Especially when they're really diabolical and seem to have really complex backstory that plays into their whole character arc a little bit.
Yeah. And I don't even want those ladies to get redeemed. I just want them to be bad. Because no, you're just evil.
You're just evil. Yes. How are you going to, I think, maybe celebrate the end of this year? Do you have a celebration planned? I know it aligns with quite a large calendar year celebration, so that's pretty good. You could imagine the whole world celebrating with you, but how are you personally going to be celebrating?
I think I'm just going to be kind of relieved that it's, that it's
over. Done.
I'm toying with a couple of ideas of like, some way I can kind of visually, what could be the greatest tweet that I could do at this time. Something that I've recently done is kind of create a index where it is like, has like a one page where you can kind of zoom down and see not only like the tech day one, Leia Organa, collage photo, and then like a sentence like of all of that. I've been working on updating that to kind of have something that, you can kind of very like, so you're not just, I don't want people to think they have to like click 365 times to like go and see all of this. But trying to have like this index, I think, is kind of one thing I'm trying to do. Several people have started to ask me who is going to be the last person, and did I intentionally pick that? And I am the last person. I decided that very, very early on that I was going to allow myself to be the final person, in large part just because I want everyone to feel like they are a part of this project, because they are. Because like, it's not one of the reasons why I really wanted to, I interviewed some fans earlier in the year, is because like Star Wars would be nothing without its fans. They are a part of Star Wars. They are an integral part of Star Wars. Like if the Star Wars fans had not been, so many and just so talkative and so enthusiastic, it wouldn't have lasted 40 years, like, dark times and like, better times. And so, yeah, I did decide that I'm going to be the last one.
I think that's great though.
Yeah, I can share some ridiculous stories about myself, and I do hope to continue posting. I go back and forth between whether or not I will do it weekly starting in January, or if I'll take 6 months off. I mean, it really like
it's been a lot to do, like, and it's seriously impressive.
Thank you.
I remember when I first found it, I was like, is she literally doing this? She's literally doing this. And it's like happening as I look at it. And I think that that's one of the reasons I reached out to you. I wanted to reach out to you sooner, but then like just scheduling and everything like that, I was like, I can't support this interview yet. Much like I'm sure you run through, like I can't get my head wrapped around it. But I think that celebrating with you on the last day of the whole thing is like better than I could have ever imagined, interviewing mid-process, because then I actually get to get the reflection of everything too.
But like earlier today, I was started to look through my ridiculous spreadsheet that I've had the entire year. It's just such
I see you're a spreadsheet woman. Like
no, but I mean, it is not an organized spreadsheet, but it does have all the ladies listed who have been in it. And just scrolling through it, I'm just like, wow, like, like, God, that's, like, and I can sometimes remember where I was when I like was writing that one, or like, I was on vacation during that week, and, I am very, very proud of this project. I think that it has been what I like to write more than anything is kind of like film analysis, like looking at film details, like looking at film history, like, and this is much more of like a little soundbite kind of writing and stuff like that. But I think that when you put it all together, I'm very, very feeling really good about it.
It is impressive. It is awesome. It is awe-inspiring that you did this and you stuck with it and it happened. Like I'm constantly mind blown by that fact. Like it just happened. Like you did it. The fact that I can say it probably has inspired other people already to take on new projects or to explore new avenues is, I think, the point.
And hearing stuff like that, I have received several extremely nice messages over the year that like, it really, really means a lot when people take the time to reach out. It's interesting when I talk to the women who I'm interviewing, and some of these are the most high profile women, like what most people say is that they're honored to be a part of it. And I'm always like, like, I was like, if you saw my Google Analytics, you might not be quite so impressed, like, I was like, it's like not that many people are seeing it.
I think it's part of like the Twitter too, like that you post about the posts too, and you're still raising awareness, right? And
it makes me feel good to make these women feel good. Like some of them have never really been interviewed before about their jobs. Like this was kind of their first interview experience. A lot more of them had been interviewed, all different kinds, but they certainly did not have to spend their time with me. I sent, some questions out to Claudia Gray into the internet, thinking that I would never hear anything back. Very pleased is going to be the last interview, like on 365. And so, like, that was a very, like, I was like, ooh, that's a really good last one. then I was like, I wish I would have sent her twice as many questions. But it really, like, to me, like, it has been a nice circle because I found it inspiring. People I've interviewed have found it inspiring. Like, people who've read it, like it. It's gotten a lot of, like, attention from both women and men. I have had nothing but support from several people who work at Lucasfilm. I have not been turned down for anything, like, you know, that I've asked for. Like, I mean, it's not like I've gotten every single interview I've asked for, but like when people have been like, let me check with Lucasfilm, let me run this by Lucasfilm, like it's always been a yes. I appreciate that because you never know, you know, like you never know when people from Lucasfilm start following you on Twitter, if they're doing it because they like what you're doing or because they're going to shut you down.
Yeah. So what is your, I suppose, next project that you're going to be working on, or what are you going to take on next after the long rest?
I know. After the I know. Well, I'm like, knowing me, I will probably spend much more time in 2019 on this as I like, even though I think that if I say I'm not, I probably still will spend quite a bit of time on this next year. I have another website that I kind of created and abandoned that is called See Classic Films, which is all about kind of like being able to find classic films. It started off as an idea where it was like listing theaters where you could see classic films in the theater, because I do enjoy I think it's important to see movies in theater, even though I see plenty of films on my iPad in my own home. I still love film history and film preservation. And so I've always kind of wanted to keep a connection with that. And so I do think that I'm going to do more with that website. I still hope to contribute every now and then to the official Star Wars website. That has been really fun, but I don't know. I want to write a Star Wars reference book. I always feel like I should, you know, plug that into anyone who might be listening. Like that is what I would love to do. So, you know, if anyone needs a writer, I'm sure that, you know, they're desperate because no one else wants to do it.
She's incredibly good at research. I'm just going to say. Plugging her myself.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. No, but I think that like I always like writing reference things. And so like I think that I'm either going to end up writing some sort of like film analysis, like academic thing that like like 3 people will read, but like I'll be really excited about it, or, you know, just do something else in, you know, the reference realm.
Can I think of the perfect synergy for Amy? A reference book on all of the film genres that have been done in Star Wars.
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Like film noir. You could really dig into the Clone Wars too, because there's like 10,000 of them.
Well, what's great about Star Wars is that almost, you know, everyone who has directed a Star Wars movie is really just like is a huge film lover and a film nerd, has been so inspired by so many other things. And I think that is always something that I try for younger Star Wars fans. There are a lot of people who tweet about, you know, like the films that inspired Star Wars. And I love seeing those tweets because I think that it really is a good jumping off point to see movies that maybe you wouldn't see before, like movies that you wouldn't even think about seeing.
Well, I've been looking for somebody to watch Hidden Fortress and discuss it with me. That's been like my dream, because I've like literally wanted somebody just to like sit down and be like, okay, watch this weird movie with me.
I know, that's
it's
me.
Amazing.
I haven't seen that since I haven't seen that in a long time. We should watch it. You can call me.
Yes, let's do it. Yes. And I'll have you back and we'll watch Hidden Fortress. It's like there's this tall peasant and this little chubby peasant, and they wander around making commentary about their, you know, they're basically Ronin that's like trying to save the day against the evil lord that lives in the castle that's captured the princess. Say what? I know George has spoken about how much he was inspired by Hidden Fortress, and especially Kurosawa, but it's just really interesting to actually watch it and then do the direct comparison, because
I mean, it's great. It's so interesting to me. Some of the best movies they're almost, you know, unless they're like very, very early in film history, like they were of course inspired by other, you know, works. And I think that a lot of people just don't, you know, they don't think about it, like you don't realize it. And I think that you can kind of gain a better appreciation for both films when you kind of make those connections.
And like talking about C-3PO being inspired by the android robot from Metropolis, like by Ralph McQuarrie, and his inspiration from that. So like there's all of these film connections of the films that have come before. And that's why Star Wars also feels fresh, but also so familiar to us almost in our collective unconscious of pop culture.
Right. And what I will say that one of my favorite, I have just been procrastinating. So there's a couple of posts that I haven't written yet for December. But one of them is a woman that I discovered when I was reading a Star Wars reference book about stormtroopers. It mentioned a woman named Liz Moore, who I'd never heard of before, and how she was one of the sculptors of C-3PO.
Yep, I know about Liz. Yeah, she was the one who took on C-3PO originally, but then actually couldn't finish C-3PO through the end. But Anthony Daniels talks quite a bit about the costume and how much Liz did in a few of his interviews. It's really
and she ended up, she was in the Stormtrooper book because she also was one of the people that worked on the original sculpt for like the Stormtrooper helmet. And she sadly she died in a car accident before, I think it was even before A New Hope came out.
I knew that she wasn't able to there was a reason she couldn't finish C-3PO's build, but she had done the sculpt, and that's like how he looks is because of her.
But like I never heard, like I felt like I was a super Star Wars geek. I'm like how have I not heard her name? I felt like I had watched so many behind the scenes things about the original trilogy, but you can still find these women. Like I had a whole week of women who worked for ILM in the 1980s, and I really learned all kinds of things that I didn't know before. But it's interesting that like this woman had this little part, like, and who, like, how could she ever know? And this, I have had several posts, like there were a couple of women that died this year who I've profiled on 365 Star Wars women.
Well, like there was the script doctor that helped with A New Hope.
So Gloria Katz.
Yeah.
I think she is like one of the last women, I'm pretty sure, on like this month. I think that she's still on there. But Allison, Shermer was a producer on Rogue One and Solo. Mm-hmm. And she passed away from lung cancer this year. And then there was a colorist whose name I'm spacing out, Marjorie Severin, I think it was her name. Her comics career was, she had done some Star Wars stuff, but she had done all this other stuff. And like she had this amazing comic book career. I don't even think that she probably would have made this list had she not died actually this year, because like I read, people were tweeting about her when the day that she died. And I looked at her and I'm like, oh my gosh, she did she did the coloring on like the Star Wars #1,
wow.
So I was sad to hear that she had passed away, but I was happy to get a chance to celebrate her.
Yeah, and that's what I love about this whole project in one word, which is that, hey, we've had a chance to celebrate her.
It's interesting kind of taking the Star Wars universe, which is so huge, and just talking about one tiny little part of it a day. It's been interesting and just has given me a better kind of appreciation for, partially just for all the work that goes into all of these movies and all of these TV shows, all of the books. Like it's insane in a good way.
In a really good way. And in a, hey, not to say, hey, there isn't going to be more stories to tell, but hey, to this point, we are very lucky to have these stories, have these contributors and these creators, and have 360 days of Star Wars women.
It really is crazy looking back.
Thank you so much, Amy, for doing this, for having this mini look back and celebration of what you've done.
I feel like it's been a bit of a feel good Star Wars,
Yeah. Which we need more of.
We need more Which we do need more of, because like, I mean, I have no patience for people arguing on Twitter about Star Wars. Like I personally find it very easy to skip over a lot of it. Like I think it's important when you see stuff that is like racist or hatred or, sexist. I think it is important to take a moment to like call that out and like bring attention to it and like make sure that it like, like that stops. But for the most part, I am on social media not for Star Wars discussions even, but really just for Star Wars information. Like I want to see Star Wars fan art. I want links to articles that have more in-depth stuff. Like I'm not there for polls and the rankings and what's your controversial thought? None of them are actually all that controversial to me. And so like all of that, like I try to like, I think a lot of what Star Wars Twitter kind of is about, like is not for me. Like,
yes.
So I just scroll by it. I don't think I complain about it because then I would be part of the problem.
Yes.
But I really just kind of wanted to carve out let's just celebrate Star Wars every day. Like, here we go.
That's so awesome. And you know what? You have done it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now you can rest. Now my watch is over.
I know. I'm like, Frodo with the ring, like at Mordor, like it's done. It's over.
I'm happy to actually hear that you feel inspired enough to take on more and to continue to have conversations, especially as new characters, new creators, new awesome Star Wars is continuously created. Like, I want to see the Carrie Williams post about her character. Like, what character is she playing? Episode 9. Like, I want to see that. I want to see if there's more characters from Resistance, or more creators.
I barely even gotten to touch Resistance, really.
Yeah.
I had to kind of be like, okay, I could just go like full on Resistance, but I was like, I kind of want to wait and like let those characters grow a little bit more before I do that. And so, trying to figure out where I stop like doing research to add people, because it just became like, it's like Thunderdome, like that last 10 days. Like, who's in, who's out, like, ooh, like, do I have too many behind the scenes people? Like, oh, like, I got this person, shoot.
I just think that what you've done has been wonderful. Thank you for doing it from me. And also from anyone who's listening to this. I will say thank you for them too. Sorry, guys and gals, if you're listening and you didn't want to thank Amy, too bad.
I know, too bad. Well, thank you. And I really, really would like to thank everyone who read it, who retweeted it, who shared it, who sent me notes, who interviewed, there were plenty of people who put me in contact with other people to interview, all kinds of publicists. Like, I mean, like, really, like, it was a village. It was a lot of people who played a little part in this. I really, really appreciate it. Because it's really, like, as much as it might have meant for anybody else who like did it, like, I can guarantee that it meant way more to me personally. So.
That's amazing. So, Amy, where can people find you if they are looking for you out there on the internet?
So you can find me on Twitter. It's at Amy Richau. So it's AMYRICHAU. You can find all of the 365. What is the hashtag? It's 365 Star Wars Women.
Yep.
The website, I believe, is also 365starwarswomen.com. Although I have purchased 365starwars.com, which scared my husband. He's like, "What? Like,
what are you starting?"
Yeah, I know. Like, just in case I decide to go back, in 2020, something else. Those are the main places you can find me.
Awesome. And I'll link to those in the liner notes, as well as, of course, the website itself, which you can start to peruse and enjoy and dig into all of the wonderful women there. Thank you. This has been What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould. We now have a Patreon available at patreon.com/whattheforce. We'd like to thank our patrons who love What the Force, In Wild Space and Night Huntress for supporting the show, as well as all of our other patrons. Check it out if you're interested in supporting the show. We will be releasing special content as well as updates through the Patreon. We are available on iTunes, Google Play, and pretty much everywhere podcasts are found, including YouTube. Our website is whattheforce.ca. We are available on Facebook at What the Force Podcast, and you can reach out to us on Twitter at WT Force Show to start a conversation. Cheers.